Dark Souls 3 is pretty alright. You know, I think the first one was designed better, but I don't mind, because I think the third installment has possibly the best boss in the entire franchise. The Covetous Demon from Dark Souls 2 is the best goddamn— sorry, it's the Abyss Watchers. I mean, right before you even meet them, the Abyss Watchers are unique and interesting. Everything leading up to these guys is designed to create a foreboding sense of mystery. The first thing you encounter is a shambling path leading you on. Normally you just move on, but up ahead you see something. Two groups of enemies fighting each other, and as far as I can remember, this is only the second time this happens in Dark Souls 3. So already this area has set itself apart and creates a sense of mystery. And because the strategic move is to let them fight it out and then pick off the stragglers, you're encouraged to wait and contemplate what you're seeing. Chances are you'll notice how weird it is to see two groups fighting, but you'll also notice this slow, ominous drone in the background. I think the next boss might be Slenderman. Furthermore, if you played the first game, you'll know what these guys are. Dark Wraiths, an enemy heavily connected to the Abyss, and yet no Abyss in sight. If you haven't played the first game, it's just a cool, creepy new enemy, which is still somewhat ominous. Once you're thoroughly creeped out, you'll make your way up the path, mopping up the bad neighbor who is putting weed killer on the garden while you're there. And then, the crescendo. So, you know this shit is a boss door. It's huge as fuck, there's a boss behind it. Actually, as far as Dark Souls is concerned, maybe the door is the boss. But when you approach it, you hear the clash of swords. What? The boss is already fighting someone? That's never really happened in a Dark Souls game before. It creates mystery and interest, as opposed to walking through the door and playing fucking peekaboo like with the last three bosses. Oh, where's he hiding? There he is! Good papa! And when you pluck up the courage to open those doors, you witness what I think is the coolest cutscene in Dark Souls. What in the name of Artorias have I just walked in on? The boss is fighting itself, and it's surrounded by corpses of seemingly the same guy. I really can't begin to describe just how awesome this is to me. This idea is so weird and unique. Nowhere in Dark Souls does this exist. Hell, nowhere in other games does this exist. To take what you would traditionally think of as a boss, a big enemy dead set on killing you and you alone, and flip that on its head, so that it's more like you've walked in on some crazy battlefield where you're just another contender, it's strange and unnerving. Questions flood in like what, why, and how do you see out of that? Apart from Osiris, the Dancer, and the Twin Princes, this was like the kind of thing that Dark Souls 3 needed so much more of. Dark Souls 1 had so much creativity and passion poured into it. I mean, it was about the same for the bosses, like the Moonlight Butterfly, the Gaping Dragon, the Four Kings, and the Sword Pupper, but the areas especially had so much more creativity. Lakes with islands of ash and giant foggy trees, sheer cliffs with countless pieces of thrown together scaffolding, black endless voids, a completely burnt out tower covered in ash, spider nests, long bridges. One area is inside a fucking tree. This tree may be hollow, but the experience certainly isn't. In Dark Souls 3, it's all pretty generic. You got the snow level, you got the lava level, the swamp level, the castle level, the skelly level. Why does every Dark Souls gotta have a skeleton level? It's not even part of the typical elemental level design that people feel like they just need to do. I mean, at least do something different with... Okay, I take it back. Alright, that's enough visual design. Wait, no? This knife looks like the world's most painful vibrator. Okay, now we're done. Even when we get into gameplay, the Abyss Watchers still carry that uniqueness. Having a couple of the same enemies charge at you is fine. Having timed multiple enemies that force you to balance safety with your speed is more interesting, but having timed enemies where the second one of the two additional enemies that spawned is on your side is fucking genius. Not only is this probably the most unique combat scenario for a boss in the whole Dark Souls franchise, it's also probably the deepest. Whereas most scenarios in Dark Souls generally force you to split up enemies or play around their movesets, the Abyss Watchers give you so many goddamn tactical decisions to make. At the start, you might want to play risky and put down as much damage as you can, but knowing that if you go too ham, you won't notice the next watcher spawn in. Then, if 2 Abyss Watchers scare you, you can pussy the fuck out until the 3rd one arrives, and when he does, you can 2v2 that shit, or use him as bait and wail on the real boss. But you can also take the risk of trying to take one out early, so that you and your ally can wail on the boss together. You have so many strategies to consider, and the answer you arrive at is going to be dependent on your playstyle and your items. But then if your ally and your enemy spawn in a certain location, you may be tempted to change your strategy on the fly, to play it safe or take a golden opportunity. No matter how you look at it, the Abyss Watchers provide something that a lot of bosses don't have, a truly dynamic combat scenario. It's satisfying and it's challenging, unless you brought a friend, which I didn't do because, what do I look like, a pussy? I also play without embers, because I'm a man! But this isn't the only cool thing about the Abyss Watchers. There's a lot of subtle stuff that makes fighting this boss even more fun. So, I love combat in Dark Souls, but one drawback of its system is that it does require some level of memorization, especially with bosses or enemies with really high poise. Some moves are really good in the way that they're telegraphed. You can tell exactly where the swing will strike and you can work out where to dodge to. But you still need to memorize the combo if there is one, and also when the charge up ends, which you'd think you'd be able to estimate in certain circumstances, but... You don't know when an attack pattern is finished and when you can strike, and not every build up to an attack is obvious. I can tell this is a horizontal swing, but what the hell is that? Why are you so far back? You're never gonna— Oh shit! But as soon as you've learnt that, you're left with an interesting combat scenario where you have to quickly observe your opponent and move to put yourself in the best position to counter. Find ins, outs, manage your health, and your stamina too. Do I keep fighting? Can I take a hit? Do I grab Estus now? Do I have enough time to be greedy and put in another swing? And then there's the whole pre-fight section, where you're considering what you're fighting and what the best gear is for the scenario. Unfortunately, memorizing isn't necessary for all of this, but memorizing sucks. It's a straight line, it doesn't have choice to it, it's just bashing your head against a brick wall. And I don't need to prove that to you. All you need to do is think back to school and writing things down. Wasn't that boring? That's because you were never forced to change your approach depending on the scenario. So how can we help this? We make it easier to remember! Distinctiveness, appropriately something the Abyss Watchers do with every other part of their design, they also do really well here. All of the Abyss Watchers' attacks are very distinctive from each other. You've got the planted stance lunge, the sword high in the air sweep charge, even the moves without build-up are clear as glass. The only gap-closing move without build-up puts him in the air. Now it's super easy to remember what attack this is. The combos are definitely less so, mind you, but unlike the Pontiff, his sword isn't 20 times the length of my patience, so I'm not punished for rolling backwards because I can't be bothered to memorize this. There's a couple of different ones and they all contain small fast swings with no build-up, so it's harder to discern them from one another, but all of them end with very clear strikes that look like the end. The 3-hit combo in particular is actually one of the clearest. 3 built-up swings ending in a drop that sends a dust cloud everywhere. See how much easier this is to remember? Now I know exactly when I have my opening. But this move is pretty genius in the way it plays around counterattacks. The smoke clouds actually double as, well, a smoke cloud. It obscures vision right when you'd want to launch a counterattack. You don't know whether you're launching into another Abyss Watcher, or even if you're just too late with your counter and you're jumping straight into another whoa! You have to pay attention to your surroundings and estimate where everything is going to be a second from now, or specifically dodge in certain directions to put yourself at an angle where you can actually see. And this smoke cloud always signifies the end of a combo. He never sends up smoke if his combo is not finished. And you might not notice this consciously, but you do subconsciously. This smoke cloud makes the move feel heavy, and as a result, final. And this is especially important when you get into his second phase. A lot of his moves are still easy to remember, but now they have little twists on them. You can still exploit them, but his combos, the one thing that are hard to remember, now have a ridiculous range. And you'd think they'd have a similar problem to the Pontiff, where he's fucking volatile at close range and you really can't do anything next to parrying, which a lot of players don't like to do, which is a topic for another video. But unlike the Pontiff, when he gains his extra range advantage and you're forced to close the gap if you want to do damage, you can actually keep far out for the hard to remember part of the combo and only move in for the last hit, because you know it's the last hit. Boom! Fire explosion instead of a smoke cloud. And there's basically no tracking on it, so you should have no problems rolling around to his side while he's still trying to unbonfire his sword. This isn't just where you can exploit him, this is where he was designed to be exploited. This is the problem with some of the people designing Dark Souls. Everyone who fails looks at it from a surface level perspective. They think, this game is hard, our objective is to beat the player. It's not! It's fucking not! That's not to say make it easy, but put it this way. As a designer, your player should have left for the boss room more times than you can count, and left the game as many times as they've beaten it. I must have died to the Abyss Watchers a good 30 times, but I did it, and the feeling of standing there in that quiet room that just a second ago was alive with the sounds of clashing steel and a bellowing choir, with now nothing to do but take in the simple pleasure of peace, ambience, and a job well done, it was a feeling of true satisfaction. And that was the beauty of the Abyss Watchers.